It started with small things. I used to think I was just getting old. After all, who doesn't feel a bit slower in their 60s? But one morning, I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back at me. He looked tired, not just sleepy, but empty. There was no spark in his eyes, no tension in his muscles. He was there, but fading. My name is George. I'm 64, and I want to tell you something that no doctor ever told me in time. Your testosterone can begin to disappear without warning, and you won't even realize it until it's almost gone. And the scariest part? You'll think it's just life, just age, just you, but it's not. If you're a man over 60, please stay until the end of this story, because I almost lost my marriage, my identity, and my will to live, all because I didn't know the signs. If this feels like it could be your story too, click subscribe and stay with me. You're not alone. I used to be a morning person. I'd wake before the sun, sip hot coffee on the porch, feel the cool breeze on my skin, and plan out my day with quiet confidence. But somewhere along the way, that man drifted away. I began hitting the snooze button. Not because I was tired, because I had no desire to face the day. Everything felt pointless. Julia, my wife of 38 years, started noticing the changes. She never said it outright, but I could see it in her eyes. Concern, confusion, and distance. I wasn't the man who made her laugh anymore. I wasn't the partner who initiated a walk or a hug or a kiss. We weren't fighting, but we weren't connecting either. We were coexisting, like roommates in a museum of memories. I blamed work stress. Then I blamed age. Then I blamed the world. But deep down, I blamed myself. It wasn't until I forgot our anniversary that something snapped. Julia didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just looked at me and said quietly, "Where did you go?" And I didn't have an answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from stress, but from a gnawing fear. What if I was disappearing one piece at a time? What if this wasn't just getting older? What if I was sick and didn't even know it? That was the night I found an article titled, "5 Hidden Signs of Low Testosterone in Men Over 60. I read it, then read it again. Every symptom. I had them all. The next morning, I sat at the breakfast table in Sydney. Julia placed a plate of eggs in front of me, just like she always did. I murmured a thank you, but didn't look up. I could feel her eyes on me, wondering where her husband had gone. She reached across the table and touched my hand gently. I flinched, not from her touch, but from guilt. When was the last time I had touched her first? When was the last time I made her feel desired? I realized I had become a ghost in my own home. Present, but not really there. Later that day, I found myself alone in the garage, staring at my dusty golf clubs. I used to love the game, the swing, the sun, the smell of cut grass. But now I felt nothing, not boredom, not nostalgia, just sick, nothing. I started keeping track of other changes. My belly had grown, even though my appetite had shrunk. I was losing muscle, even though I wasn't moving any less. And I was snapping at small things, like forgetting where I put my keys, or when the TV remote didn't work. I was embarrassed by how easily I lost control. Julia suggested I talk to someone, a counselor maybe. But I didn't want therapy. I didn't want to talk about my childhood or my father or unresolved emotions. I wanted answers. Real, biological answers. That's when I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Collins. I asked him, point blank, could this be hormonal? He didn't laugh. He didn't shrug it off. He nodded slowly and said, actually, yes. For men over 60, testosterone can decline significantly, and it doesn't just affect sex drive. It impacts mood, memory, energy, and even how you see yourself. I felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief that I wasn't imagining things. Fear that I had let this go on for too long. He ordered blood work. A week later, the results came back. My testosterone levels were in the low range, well below where they should be for my age. It wasn't just aging. It was a chemical imbalance quietly eroding my body, my mind, and my marriage. And now that I knew, I couldn't unknow it. That was the day I began the journey to take back control. In the next part, I'll walk you through those 5 signs and how each one had crept into my life while I wasn't paying attention. But before we continue, let me ask you, have you been waking up tired, even after 8 hours? Lost interest in things you used to love? Snapped at your partner over nothing? You might think it's just life, but it might be something deeper. Stick around, because the most important part of this story is still ahead. When Dr. Collins handed me the test results, I stared at the paper like it might change if I looked hard enough. Low testosterone, it said, but I wasn't sure what to feel. Angry, relieved, embarrassed. I had always thought testosterone was for bodybuilders and aggressive young men, not for soft-spoken fathers of 2 who loved jazz music and grilled salmon. But as I sat in my car outside the clinic, holding that paper, memories began to surface. Moments that had passed unnoticed suddenly took on new meaning. Here are the 5 signs that were quietly whispering at me, and I ignored every single one. 1, constant fatigue, even after rest. The exhaustion didn't make sense. I was sleeping 8 hours a night, sometimes more. Yet every morning, I'd wake up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. There was no spring in my step, no energy to make breakfast, no desire to even talk. Julia started asking, "Are you okay?" And I'd nod, lying. Just a long week. But it wasn't the week. It was something deeper. Low testosterone disrupts cellular repair and saps energy production. Without it, your body runs like an engine on dirty fuel, always sputtering, never firing clean. 2, loss of interest. In everything. This one broke me the most. I stopped playing music. My guitar, my lifelong friend, gathered dust in the corner. I stopped cooking Sunday dinners with Julia. She would suggest recipes, but I'd shrug. Whatever's easy. I stopped walking in the park, where I used to wave at neighbors and watch the ducks with my grandson. Nothing brought joy. Not music, not food, not even the people I loved. It wasn't sadness. It was a hollowing out, like someone had scooped out my spark. Testosterone is deeply tied to motivation. When levels drop, so does your drive, your why. 3, emotional reactivity. I wasn't just tired, I was irritable, easily frustrated. The smallest thing, a misplaced bill, a late delivery, a TV channel not working, could ruin my whole day. I snapped at Julia once, When she reminded me to take out the trash, she didn't argue, just nodded and walked away. The look in her eyes was the worst part. Not fear, but disappointment. Low testosterone disrupts the balance of serotonin and dopamine, brain chemicals that help regulate emotion. It also increases cortisol, our stress hormone. The result? You go from calm to chaos in seconds. 4. Belly fat. That wouldn't go away. I never had a six-pack, but I had always been fairly trim. Then, almost overnight, my waistline expanded. My jeans stopped fitting. Even my shirts started pulling tight across my stomach. And the worst part, I wasn't eating more. In fact, I'd lost my appetite. Testosterone helps regulate fat storage. When it drops, especially after 60, your body starts piling fat around the abdomen and converts more testosterone into estrogen. It's not just cosmetic, it's biochemical sabotage. 5. Loss of libido and morning erections. This one was hardest to admit, even to myself. It wasn't just about sex, it was about intimacy. I stopped reaching for Julia at night, not because I didn't love her, but because I didn't feel like a man anymore. She noticed. Of course she did. She tried to talk about it gently. I brushed her off. I'm just tired. But I wasn't tired. I was scared, ashamed. Morning erections had disappeared months ago, and I pretended not to notice. Low testosterone impacts blood flow, nerve sensitivity, and libido. But more than that, it chips away at identity. When you stop feeling like a man, everything else begins to crumble. One night, after we went to bed in silence, Julia turned off the lamp and whispered, "I miss you." Those words hit harder than any diagnosis. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my chest tighter. She hadn't said, "I'm angry," or "What's wrong with you?" She said, "I miss you." It was in that moment I realized this wasn't just about numbers on a lab report. It was about reclaiming the parts of myself I'd slowly let slip away. If you recognize any of these signs, even just one, don't ignore them. This isn't weakness. It's not just getting older. It's a biological message from your body saying, "Hey, something's off. Come back to yourself." Please, if this resonates, tap subscribe. There's more I want to share. Stories, solutions, hope. In the next part, I'll tell you exactly how I rebuilt my testosterone. Naturally, no needles, no shortcuts, just sunlight, sleep, movement, and belief. Belief that I was still in there. And maybe, so are you. The next morning, something shifted. Not dramatically, not like in the movies. There was no lightning bolt, no sudden inspiration. Just a still, painful silence in the kitchen. The kind that hangs in the air after someone says, "I miss you." I watched Julia pour herself a cup of coffee. Her hands moved with quiet grace, familiar and foreign all at once. And that's when I realized I wasn't the only one grieving. She had lost someone too, me. At that moment, something inside me, a small ember buried under months of numbness, flickered. It whispered, "Fight." I didn't know where to begin. So I began with what I had: sunlight. That morning, I stood barefoot on our porch, letting the first rays of daylight warm my face. It wasn't much, but it was something. Sunlight, I later learned, tells your brain it's time to wake up, to regulate hormones like melatonin, and cortisol. More importantly, it helps your body produce vitamin D, a critical piece in testosterone production. Every morning, I showed up for that light, even when the sky was overcast. Even when I felt silly standing there shirtless at 7 a.m., it became my silent ritual. Then I walked, not far, just around the block, then twice. Then I added light weights, push-ups on the stairs, body squats while waiting for the kettle to boil. I wasn't training for a marathon. I was telling my body, "You're not done yet." Resistance training, even mild, increases testosterone by stimulating growth hormone and reducing belly fat. And fat, especially abdominal fat, is where testosterone goes to die. 3 weeks in, something happened. I laughed, not a chuckle. A full, gut-deep, surprised by joy laugh. Julia had told a bad pun, something about coffee and jazz. Normally I'd groan, but this time I laughed. And she looked up like she'd seen a ghost, or maybe a man coming home. I started changing my diet, not by following trends, but by listening to my body. I added eggs, pumpkin seeds, avocados, olive oil, fatty fish like salmon. I cut sugar, alcohol, highly processed foods, not perfectly, not always, but enough. I learned that testosterone is built from cholesterol, the good kind, and that starving yourself or eating only low-fat everything is like trying to build a fire without wood. At night, I made sleep sacred. I darkened the room, set the temperature cooler, no screens, no noise, no excuses. I read. I breathed slowly. 4 counts in, 7 hold, 8 out. I stopped drinking fluids past 8 p.m. Sleep, especially deep, non-REM sleep, is when testosterone is made. And every hour I gained at night, I felt more alive during the day. But more than all of that, I did one thing that changed everything. I forgave myself for ignoring the signs, for pushing away the woman I love, for pretending I was fine when I wasn't. Low testosterone doesn't make you less of a man, but hiding from it does. Julia noticed before I did. "Yuval, you're humming again," she said one morning. I hadn't realized. I was just scrambling eggs, but I was humming a jazz tune from years ago. That night, she touched my arm in bed, just lightly, and I didn't pull away. I turned to her, eyes open. "I'm still here," I said. She smiled through tears. "I know. Gentlemen, listen. This isn't just about testosterone. It's about reclaiming the light that makes you, you. It's about showing up each day, even when you feel empty, and choosing to believe your best years aren't behind you. If any part of this story sounds familiar, stay with me. In the next chapter, I'll show you the exact routine, morning to night, that rebuilt my hormones and my hope. But more importantly, I'll remind you, you're not alone. Click subscribe. We're just getting started. I had no magic bullet, no miracle drug, just a decision to show up every single day and do the next right thing. This is the routine that saved me. Not overnight, but steadily, quietly, like a stream carving out a canyon. 6:30 a.m. Morning light and breath before coffee, before phone. I step outside barefoot, even if it's cold. 10 minutes of sun on my skin, or just grey light through clouds. I breathe deep, filling my lungs. My only goal, remind my body it's morning, and I'm still alive. 7 o'clock a.m. Movement before motivation. I don't wait to feel motivated. I move first. 10 bodyweight squats, 10 push-ups against the kitchen counter, 15 minutes walking around the block. I play music that reminds me of youth, Motown, Springsteen, Sinatra. I move like I have something to prove, because I do. 7:30 a.m. Protein and fat. For breakfast, 3 eggs, half an avocado, a handful of pumpkin seeds, black coffee, no sugar, no toast. I used to eat cereal and orange juice. Now I know that's a glucose bomb. I want testosterone, not insulin. 8:30 a.m. Mental focus. I sit in the quiet. Just 5 minutes. No phone, no to-do list. I let my brain settle. Sometimes I breathe. Sometimes I just watch the trees outside. I learned this lowers cortisol, and cortisol kills testosterone. Stillness, it turns out, is fuel. 12 p.m. Balanced lunch. Grilled salmon or chicken. Steamed greens. Olive oil. A small handful of rice or sweet potato. I eat slowly, seated, no screen in front of me. I taste every bite. My body isn't a garbage disposal anymore. It's a laboratory, making the chemical of life. 4 p.m. Midday crash defense. This used to be my nap time. Now I walk 10 minutes in the sun, or I stretch, or I do 5 deep breaths and drink cold water. No caffeine, no sugar, just presence. 6:30 p.m. Dinner with someone you love. Even if it's leftovers, even if it's soup, sit with someone. My son started dropping by more often once he saw the change in me. We eat, we talk, we laugh. Testosterone isn't just about muscles, it's about meaning, and connection builds it faster than bench presses. 9:30 p.m. Sacred sleep. No screens, no news. Just a book, a cool room, and silence. I keep my phone out of the bedroom. I sleep in total darkness, and I never, ever skip this ritual. Sleep is when testosterone is made. Miss sleep, miss life. This routine didn't just bring my testosterone back, it brought me back. I started smiling again without thinking about it. I had energy at 4 p.m. I initiated conversations, hugs, ideas. I didn't just become a better vet for me. I became a better man with the people I love. One night, I was wiping down the kitchen counter after dinner. Julia came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. No words, just warmth. Later, I asked, "What changed?" She said, "You did. But the beautiful part is, you did it for yourself." That hit me harder than any lab result. Gentlemen, you can't supplement your way back to manhood. You have to earn it. But you don't have to do it alone. In the final chapter, I'll share what almost knocked me off course and how I stayed strong when life tested me again. Stay with me. You're worth the fight. I thought the hard part was over. Testosterone back. Energy back. Connection with Julia deeper than ever. My son started inviting me to his weekend hikes. I had a routine. I had a life. But life doesn't always play fair. It started with a call. Julia's voice was tight. "Your brother had a stroke. He's stable, but it's serious." We flew out the next morning. Airports, hospital rooms, sterile lights, they drained me fast. No time for sunlight, no time for walks or food prep or silence, no rhythm, just stress. And suddenly, I felt it. Not all at once, but in pieces. Fatigue creeping in, sleep broken again, a snap at Julia over nothing, the old fog creeping back into my head. One night, sitting in the hospital cafeteria, I stared into a cup of decaf and thought, is this it? Do I lose everything again the moment life gets hard? That scared me more than anything. Not because I was tired, but because I believed, for a second, that I was powerless again. But then I remembered something my doctor told me early on. Testosterone is sensitive, but so are you. You don't need to be perfect, you need to be consistent. So that night, in a cheap hotel next to the hospital, I stood barefoot by the window and opened the curtains. Let the moonlight hit my face. I breathed. Then I did 10 squats. The next morning, I walked the parking lot. I ate 2 boiled eggs. I told Julia I was sorry for snapping. I let her hold my hand again. I didn't need the perfect routine. I just needed to keep showing up. That was my test. Not a lab result, not a hormone count, but of this. Could I live like a man, even when life got messy again? The answer was yes, but only because I chose it. 3 months later, I was home again. My brother was recovering. Life was settling. And one morning, as I stepped into the sunlight, Julia came up behind me, rested her chin on my shoulder, and whispered, "You didn't break this time." I nodded. Tears welled up. "No," I said, "I didn't. Gentlemen, hear me now. The fire inside you is not gone. It's waiting for your permission." This story is not about magic diets or perfect routines or miracle herbs. It's about choosing every single day to remember that you matter. If you felt tired, small, lost, if you've looked in the mirror and seen a man you don't recognize, you are not broken. You are not weak. You are being called to come back. Back to movement, back to sunlight, back to laughter, and back to the man who once made her eyes light up. You don't need to rewind time. You just need to turn back toward yourself. Before you go, do one thing. Write down one step you'll take tomorrow. One small promise to yourself, because no one is coming to save you. But if you start moving, the fire will follow. Subscribe. Share this with someone you love. And remember, you're not too old. You're just getting started.